Killsquad is a top-down twin-stick squad-based shooter from Nova Arma. It can be from 1 to 4 players on individual missions, and whilst it's a twin-stick shooter, it also blends a variety of other genres. It states that it's RPG based, and whilst there is a level progression sort of system, which I haven't figured out how that works, because there are different missions where it suggests different ranks, but you can play like rank 30 levels as a rank 5 and still do reasonably well if you don't get hit, of course, because you do take a lot of damage. So I would assume that your ranking up does make your weapons and your health, you know, have bigger stats and all of the traditional things like that. But I'd also describe it more Mobaesque, because at the start of each individual mission, you start with a blank slate on your character, and then you have to level up during that mission, and every mission's a blank slate, so you'll start off with that, and then you choose which upgrades you want, which powers you want as you level up, and you base your gameplay around that. And you know, it's that sort of Mobaesque feel where the individual mission is its own thing, its own entity, and you start off fresh and you build it up for that individual mission, and based around your squads as well. So if you're playing independent, you might want specific skills, whereas other ones will be more team based, and there are 4 different characters that you can choose from. And you might think, oh, it's a top-down shooter, they're just going to be purely cosmetic and it's not going to make a lot of difference. You know, maybe they might have slightly different shooty powers, you know, with a slightly different gun. But that's not the case. They've actually done a really good job of making all of the 4 characters that are currently there, because it is early access at present, coming out today for 20% off. So it's currently £17, but would naturally be £21.25 UK prices. And each of the 4 characters are pretty different feeling in their gameplay and mechanics, so that is really well done. So whilst there are 2 shooting classes and 2 melee classes, they all feel very different. So they've got the first character who has pistols, but he uses his pistols to mark the enemies, and then you've got skills that revolve around marking the enemies and doing things like that. So that's a pretty unique way of doing it, whereas the other shooting class has a plasma beam and also shoots plasma balls, and also is sort of the healer of the class, and he drops like medkits. But you could also do this when you're on your own and just have a ridiculous amount of healing, and he's kind of overpowered for being able to do other missions later on his own with just the healing ability, because whilst the others have to rely on getting health pickups from enemies with drops, this guy guarantees them with his own powers. So, you know, you might be taking a lot of damage, but you can heal a lot of it back up. Then you got the 2 melee classes, and one of them is like a tank bruiser sort of class, but he also has the ability to have armor, and his armor regenerates for every single hit you punch on the enemy. So that's a pretty unique way of doing it, and you know, he might have his own sort of overpowered healing sort of nature essentially with the armor as well, because as you hit more enemies, you keep the health up or your armor up, and you don't actually lose your main health. Whereas the other melee class that has to get in amongst it doesn't have armor, and kind of might be the harder one to play. But again, they've got their own individual skills, which make them feel very different in how they play for the melee classes as well. And I think that's really well done, which is really hard to do in a twin-stick top-down sort of game like this. Now, as I stated, all the missions are pretty much individual, so you choose from a variety of available missions. And it's an online multiplayer experience, so whilst you could go in solo, you know, you can also create your own private lobbies. Mostly you're going to be coming in with other players that join in the game, so there's a chance that you might come across other players, and you might want to change the character you choose to complement the rest of the team and make sure that you've got a balance of skills and availability. Now, it wasn't clear to me whether the enemies scaled with the number of people that were in the mission, because in the one mission that I did get to play with another person, had the sword melee class, which didn't gain the armor and maybe put me at a detriment to the position. So, you know, that was hard to tell whether I was really getting the benefits, you know, or was it just that that character was a lot weaker. It's hard to tell whether it scales. But I would suggest that there is a lot less experience to go round, because you're splitting the experience that you gain from killing all the monsters with all the other people in the mission. And whilst you can choose to go explore everywhere, reveal all the monsters, get all of the loot that's available, spend all the DNA in the shops, which again, you can buy health boosts or shield boosts, and the shields and armour are maybe better than just buying health boosts, because they have ways of recharging where the health doesn't. But if you don't spend these, you get these converted into credits that you can spend in the shop, in the lobby at the start of the game, and buy other upgrades. At the moment there's only really common purchases, but I'd imagine they're going to add like other things that you can purchase. Maybe loot boxes seems to be a suggestion, because I've got at least a key fragments from a mission, and it says that you need 10 other key fragments to make a key. And that's a good way of doing it, because a lot of games that have loot boxes force you to have to purchase the keys, and that kind of adds a lot of ill will. But if there's a way of getting it, even if you have to put more game time into it to get the actual keys, even if it only unlocks cosmetics and not actual guns and things that you can use, because there are other guns and other abilities that you can swap out to maybe change out your loadouts, and also there's a theme of a cosmetic that would allow you to change your characters. And obviously this is early access, so a lot could be added in the future. Speaking of which, they have actually set out a roadmap for Season 1, which is until the end of the year. So in August they're going to have a new area. There's currently 3 areas, and all of the areas do have their own unique sort of feel and aesthetic to them. And a lot of games, they will just throw the same monsters to you, and it really won't feel like you're exploring anywhere different. Maybe it'll have a slightly different visual appeal, but the way that they've done this, like they've really put a lot of effort into making sure that everywhere is unique. It's not just going to be a cosmetic sort of change. And whilst some of the enemies do have similar sort of things, like there will be the main bulk of the force that'll come and charge at you for sort of melee attacks, and then there's going to be long distance shooting monsters and a few other sort of monsters thrown in as well. They've done a good way of making sure that each area does feel unique with both the monsters and the areas. So the monsters, like I said, they may have similarities, but that's a gameplay mechanic sort of thing. But they do have different sort of attacks, and they do feel different enough and look like they belong in the areas that they're in. They're not just the same areas thrown regardless willy-nilly into all the other areas. And that's a really nice touch, I feel. And the animations are spectacular, and for a game like this you don't normally see that level of detail. But again, going back to the areas, like some of the wasteland areas are going to be side-scrolling and going across, and then there's another type of wasteland planet that has a natural disaster and bridges across places, and you have to go up and down lifts and different things. So that feels quite different in that alone. But the inside area is the best one, that's the most different, because that turns into self-contained rooms. So it's not just side-scrolling. You go into one room, you progress through that, and then everywhere has like a roguelike sort of procedural generation with the map. So it has different elements that you can recognise from run to run, but they won't be exactly the same. So it does feel like you're landing in a different area of the same sort of location. But I do like the way that the indoor area has the different rooms that you progress through, and it does look so different to the other areas. And it's got the architecture, and there's a lot of background architecture and things, and like native animals on the planets that you just see in the background, and it feels a lot more alive than a lot of the other sort of games of this genre when you're going through that. So I think that's pretty cool. And they're going to have an in-game vendor, which they do already have an in-game vendor of sorts that, like I said, you can spend your DNA on. So I'd have to wonder, it must be another type of in-game vendor, because, there is already one in there. Then there's Red Federation Forces. It says late August for these, but there are Federation Forces already in there. As I found them, they're on the level 25, 30 sort of areas, or level 20 even. And whilst I hadn't leveled up to that, I played and beat those. Not that I'm bragging, but yeah, the Federation forces just randomly come and block you off, and maybe they punish you for exploring because they are a lot harder than the native enemies. But they do put you in a bubble, so you can't run away from them, but you have to face them alone. Again, it's early access, but I have encountered a bug where the Elite Federation with his gun, if you knock him down and stand on him in a certain way, he'll just refuse to look at you. You can run up to his laser beam, like, shoot me, and he'll just be like, no. And, you can focus down the other guy at that point because he just will not attack you if that's what you want to do. And again, I bring up these bugs just so they get fixed, but I thought it was a funny bug that I came across. And September, they're planning on adding community leaderboard, player profiles, more skin packs, league unlockable, expansion for artillery barricades, new unit types for the Federation, so I guess even more Federations, and you can do contracts for them, and a new hero. So again, I did suggest, maybe they might add more heroes, or at least I plan to suggest. I don't know whether I ever mentioned it, because whilst there are 4 at present, and they've done them so very differently, they've done them so well that I'm not surprised they have 4. But, if they're going to go down the Mobaesque sort of feel, I kind of want a roster of like 20 different characters that you can play. I know it's asking a lot, especially with how well they've made them feel so different and unique, and that would be asking a ridiculous amount, but it's good that they're already planning a 5th hero. And then in Halloween they're going to add the engineer. So they're only going to reveal him in September, but they're going to plan to add him in Plague in Halloween. And then new weapon packs, new skill trees. So again, they've got skill trees on the characters, and you can choose your own ultimate, and you can choose the different things to unlock. And I like that you can build a run for that specific mission, and what's working for you at present and what you want to work in synergies. And I really feel that that's a really clever way of doing it. It's not just you start out with everything too overpowered and you just blast through it, but it gives you a reason to explore and look for the monsters. And whilst as a team you could just blast through it if there's 4 of you, maybe if it doesn't scale up, and that's cool. But if you're on your own, it's good to be able to go explore, to level up, to be strong enough to take down the enemy at the end, or whatever the special condition for the end of the mission is. And then Contracts of the Plague. Team members are cursed with different effects from the plague, so like a mutation sort of run. That seems pretty cool. And then new factions, refugees. And then in December, they're expanding the Spec Shops League, contracts involving the refugees, new perks for enemies, also like elite enemies and things, and another hero reveal. And then I guess there's even more stuff going on from that going forwards. So they are planning on adding even more heroes to the game. And I'd suggest, there's going to be even more areas than there are currently 3, they said 4 in there. So I'm going to suggest that they're going to plan on expanding even more areas to go explore, and the fact that they look and feel so different to play through is really good. So it keeps the game fresh, it doesn't make it like a stagnant sort of thing, and all the different missions, because if all the areas felt exactly the same, you'd get bored of it very quickly. But as they are quite different with their own sort of enemies and own unique enemies, and if they're going to add further enemies, and like maybe there'll be Federation worlds, and there'll be the really hard ones for like really strong missions and big rewards, because you could choose which mission you want and you get your specific rewards, and it mentions what they are beforehand, so you can choose from that. And I'd suggest maybe if you're going for a hard world, because the Federation alone, when you come across them, are hard, and if you're going and invading a Federation planet, because it's saying Federation contracts and things, so that must be Federation-specific missions, I would suggest, in my opinion. And those would seem like they're the harder ones with, bigger rewards going on. I did briefly come across one that was gold and did have a Federation character as the final boss, so I imagine that would have been very difficult, but that's the only one that I died on. I mean, it was a level 30 mission and I was a level 5, but I kind of wanted to go try it and see, and clearly didn't succeed in that one. I died very selfish. But at level 25 mission, I've passed. But again, it wasn't an elite sort of mission like that. Now, the ranking up system, I don't know if it's a bit broken at present, because let's just say with one character, the healing character, I've completed a level 5 mission, a level 20 mission, a level 25 mission, and he's only level 8, and he didn't seem to level up at all from doing the level 25 mission. Now, I don't know if that was because it was not recommended for me, and it just thought I didn't stand a chance, so it didn't level me up, or what. But I found that odd. The other shooting guy, I completed a level 5 mission, I believe. I may have done something higher, I don't know. Hubris, I can't remember. But either way, he didn't actually level up, so I'm surprised that we didn't level up from that. But again, if I picked a level 10 mission or something, and it thought it's too high for you, and didn't give me any XP, even though I defeated something even stronger than I should have been able to, and it should have gave me bigger level ups. I don't know. But again, it's early access. And then the melee character with the shield, not the shield, the armour, I defeated a mission with him, and he leveled up to level 12. And I may have given him a power-up that gives him 20% more EXP, so maybe that's why, maybe that 20% put him above a level 8. I don't know, but in one mission he's a level 12, and then the other guy that I've done like 3 or 4 missions, and they're higher up missions, and he's only a level 8. I'm not quite understanding how the vector leveling is working, but no, what can you do? It's early access. I'm sure they'll figure it out and find out what all the bugs are, as long as you bring out the bugs. But yeah, it's a really fun, really good game, and you face waves of enemies, and you can explore and bring more enemies onto you and find the loot, or you can just rush down the objective and go take on the boss, but maybe not level up enough to perform what you need to achieve. It's up to you how you want to do it, but it's a really beautiful game. It's well animated, and the enemy variety does feel pretty good, even though in this very early stage. So I really think that they've done a really good job on this, and for the price, it's really, really good. And they want to involve the community, which is why they're making it early access, so they can see what sort of things people might want, what sort of balance things work, what sort of things people actually enjoy the most, what they want from the game. And obviously, I would like more enemies, more varieties of enemies, and, things like that on the worlds, because they've got like 6 or 7 different enemies that can spawn in the different worlds. So it'd be nice to see a variety, and maybe on the stronger missions you get like special monsters that are just for those specific missions. And I do feel like you do, because there are alphas, and there are a couple of things that I've experienced, and the Federation always invade on the stronger missions, especially if you go explore everywhere. So there are some things, but obviously they're adding a lot to it, so it is worth noting. And I'd say, even for the price now, you're getting a really fun game, and it's really good for the price, so I definitely recommend you go check it out.